how we capture the true potential of partnership for international development before they were even written in the Sustainable Development Goals 2030.
I can see me. I'll be the eyes so that I just can be.
This is another episode of a special series called Enough for All of the podcast Walk, Talk, Listen. This series sheds light on 75 years of an NGO called CWS. My name is Maurice Bloem and I welcome you to another episode of Walk, Talk, Listen. Good day everybody, this is another episode of the special series Enough for All of the podcast Walk, Talk, Listen. And I'm really delighted with today's guest who will introduce himself. Martin, please go ahead.
My name is Martin Coria, and I am the regional director for Latin America and the Caribbean region for Church World Service.
Okay. Martin, you're working for Church World Service for a number of years now. How many exactly?
I started right before 9/11 in 2001.
Okay. And before you started working for CWS, had you heard about CWS already before?
Not really. In Latin America, the National Council of Churches had more name recognition because of the American Protestant churches solidarity during the 70s and 80s. So in many countries and part of the region, the National Council of Churches was the entity that was recognized. CWS until 2001 was a unit of the National Council of Churches doing disaster response and some development assistance. And I was not that familiar with mainline Protestant, world in general. So I was ecumenist by heart and values, but didn't come to CWS. Yeah, from a faith background, yes, but not from a church background.
So tell me, how did your work with CWS start?
I started the first 4 years out of the New York City office. CWS had just separated institutionally, administratively from the National Council of Churches, and I was part of the new unit created called Social and Economic Development. Back then, the division between disaster response and development was very big. There was like two different words. In these 20 years, the two really became closer and more integrated because of climate change, because of disaster risk. Because of a lot of learning from both sides, from the development side and from the humanitarian side. The barriers and the walls between development and emergency response became more porous. But I started working for social and economic development in Latin America. It was very different from today. Relationship was very important. It was very relational. Relationship was very important, both for partners and for CWS. Context also very important. That's how it started. So it took a lot of time. It took a lot of time to understand. Back then in 2001, there was very little registry or record or policies or written documentation than today. Today CWS today is an organization that reads more, writes more, which is good.
And tell a little bit about your own background, what you studied, and what were you asked to do? I understand you were a part of Social Economic Development Desk, SAD, right? But what were you exactly asked to do?
I was asked. Well, my background is I went to law school in Argentina. I'm Argentinian. I went to law school. I mean, I had a Jesuit education in Buenos Aires, Argentina. I went to the Jesuit school here. Then went to public university, to the law school. I graduated as a lawyer, working in state level government here in Argentina in Congress. And then I went to the United States to pursue graduate studies in public administration and nonprofit administration at New York University. And I graduated from NYU, and basically I applied for this position with CWS. Basically, back in 2001, I was asked to coordinate a team. You know, CWS had staff had 3 or 4 in 3 different locations in the region. I was asked to coordinate that team, support that team. This is the way how I understood my task. I understood my task as convert a list of grants based on trust and relations and history, convert a list of grants, good grants supporting great organizations doing great work, into a regional program, cohesive, coherent, contextualized, So that shift from supporting projects to really be a partner in development, with our partners, where CWS is not the main character or the main actor, but we play a unique supportive role. So basically, I understand my role in the first few years was to migrate from supporting a couple dozen great, amazing organizations to build regional goals, create communities of work with those partners, based on affinity, based on common strengths and areas of interest, It's kind of do a 2.0 or even a 3.0 version. And as a result, most of the partners we continue working together are those partners CWS was working on when I started. So it was not about changing partners, but basically working with them in a new way of collaboration.
And if I ask you to share with me one anecdote or an experience of that particular time, that maybe is a good example of, issues that you had to deal with or the things that you've learned. What is the story that you would share with me?
The first mistake, I spent a lot of time traveling. The first mistake I did traveling was in Puerto Rico. I went to visit our staff in Puerto Rico, flew in and out of Puerto Rico. I didn't see the sea. I didn't see it was an actual island. I was so focused. I mean, it was a flight schedule thing, but I was so focused on the task that I missed. I think that was a perfect example of how you can miss what is important, what is really important, which of course is not the sea or the beach, but it's the context, the situation. You may understand, when I started, I was in fact coordinator not only for Latin America and the Caribbean, but for Europe. Back in 2001, CWS had an office in Bosnia, we were kind of in the end of the Balkan War response. So we had a small team in Bosnia, supervised by the emergency response program of Church World Service. And when I started, that program, that office and program was in the process of migrating from disaster response to long-term development. And I did my first trip that lasted only for a year or so. My first trip to the Balkans marked me forever. I think it was in late 2001. And it was traveling with our team in Bosnia, and seen firsthand, what neighbor against neighbor looks like, and how in the name of God sometimes, one neighbor turn on the other neighbor and see the destruction of one house damaged, one every other house damaged, just because of politics or ethnic conflict or religious conflict or a combination of the above. What cause? I mean, that is a type of conflict. In Latin America, we are used to other type of terrible conflict, okay? But the way I experienced in that first trip to the Balkan, internal conflict within neighbors and friends, until yesterday, that marked me forever.
And what did CWS do about that particular situation? And is that what they did or what we did as an organization, an example of how we work and how we go about situations?
Well, I think that, we lead by example. We do what we preach, and we don't preach a lot, I think CWS is one of those agencies that if you want to understand CWS, see what we do, see us at work, how we promote reconciliation, integration, real inclusion, how we make development or disaster assistance inclusive to everybody, how we really make the most to reach last at the end of the line, and to leave no one behind, and how much, because of our faith and principles, we embrace everybody, and we are ready to listen, and to work with everybody if it's for the common good, for the greater good. So I think what I learned there is that that's what we do. We are profoundly rooted in faith. We are not shy about the faith-based nature of church world service. But in today's world, where religion can be both part of the problem and part of the solution, we do everything, we can to be part of the solution and not to add to the problem, especially with the extra layer of responsibility and accountability as a faith-based organization. Because in every context, country, disaster situation, development situation, you have faith-based actors, organizations doing all kind of stuff, all kind of disaster response, all kind of humanitarian, all kind of advocacy, all kind of development assistance. What I think I learned in the Balkans, seeing our response there and our work, and then I saw it in Asia in a more interfaith, context. That we are 100% consistent and coherent with that. Not that we don't make mistakes, but we really take that mandate, to serve everybody without favoritism, discrimination, very seriously, and that does not create any conflict internally.
I heard you say a couple of minutes ago about preaching. We don't preach a lot. Can you clarify that for me, what you mean with that? We don't preach a lot. Is that a good thing, or is that a bad thing, or it just is?
I think what I meant to say is that it's interesting, the difference in CWS is interesting. It's important to distinguish the narrative about CWS versus the actual work CWS does. In 20 years, I've been exposed to different kind of narratives. The world changed. The world changed. The U.S. changed. American churches changed. CWS changed. And always, when there are so many changes in your different contexts or environments, readjusting your narrative is a way to adapt, to survive, to grow, to strive, So always your narrative, the narrative about yourself, how you present to the world, it's like work in progress, especially in today's world. In these 20 years, I say Katrina, tsunami, Haiti earthquake, 9/11, war on terror, HIV/AIDS pandemic, Trump, Plan Colombia, So all the time there are things going on in the world that good and bad, climate change, global migration. All the time there are good and bad things that force us to revisit the way we tell the world who we are, what we do, I think. And CWS is no exception. We have done that, and probably we will continue to try to find the right way to present ourselves, to key audiences. Different from that is, while your narratives about yourself may change in response to the context, your core mission, your core work is much more stable. Your work addressing issues of hunger, poverty, migration, justice is much more stable. It doesn't change it has a common feature, you know what I mean? So kind of two different things. What we do and how we talk, what words and categories and framework we use to describe what we do, Both are important. This is not a right or wrong, good or bad. And in terms of preaching, after 20 years, I think CWS is, and I'm proud of that. I think we are pretty much very humble, pretty much very humble about how we build a narrative about who we are and what we do. I've seen the work CWS does domestically in the United States, but also globally in different regions. And I think our acts, our programs, what we do are our best, is the best testimony of CWS.
I've seen how we work, in the different parts of the world. But if there would be a person that has never seen, CWS at work, and you're asked to explain that to a person, how will you do that?
We don't like this word. There are many things of today's word that we like, and we are thankful for. And there are many things going on in today's world that we don't like and we want to change. We don't want, and we can't do it alone. We don't have the recipe or the silver bullet. The best we can do is to use all our talent to find those change makers, those communities, leaders, civil society, faith leaders, that are transforming the world as we speak, and work with them. Assuming that local, that we don't bring the silver bullet or the magic formula to, all the problems or all the issues or all the places, but we are learners, and basically we understand the key irreplaceable role that local people, local communities, local civil society plays, in fixing, local problems. So when we go to Haiti, for instance, it's not or Central America, it's not because we want to fix Haiti for them. Haitians are fixing Haiti, We walk in solidarity with those who are trying to do it, either in a water project, in a food security program, rural, urban program, So CWS is about finding the right place, the right moment, the right people where we can make a difference, acknowledging that we are profoundly human, imperfect, and limited, but we are 100% committed to the task. So I think what characterizes CWS is we take the complexity of development challenges very seriously. That's why we stay longer than others. And I think that's one of the reasons why others stay with CWS so long, because in many agencies like CWS, I don't know the average staff rotation, but a common feature, whatever the region of the world you take, is that CWS staff, and local teams stay longer. And I think that speaks to a number of factors, but also to the fact that development workers, development practitioners find in CWS something that is not easy to find in other international NGOs, especially, which is the ability to engage long term, to work with the local community, to support them, to invest in building, healthy partnership relationship. And lately, I think CWS is more and more, especially in Latin America and the Caribbean region, is about the margins. It's the margins of society. You will find CWS in some of the empty spaces, the vacant places, where there is not a lot of attention or concentration of players at the margins, geographic margins, the Northwest Department of Haiti, the Gran Chaco region of South America, the Atlantic coast of Nicaragua, or thematic margins of society. Children experiencing parental incarceration, older people, LGBTIQ people, in places in the Gran Chaco. So you will find us. A good way to present CWS is where people can find us, and they will find us in some of the most, sometimes remote, but sometimes really at the margins, because we are passionate, for identifying who needs solidarity, accompaniment, support, technical assistance, long-term, medium-term, capacity building support, and stay there, and accompany that,
Do you think, Martin, if you look back at 75 years, and I know you're part of 20 of those 75, right? Has CWS been successful in general, in trying to, play the role that it needs to play, working in those margins, trying to create platforms so that people can be in charge of their own future? That's one question. And then the second, in relation to that, what is the role for the next 75 years? Or is there a role for the next, or, let's say the 10 or the next 20 years? Is there a role in the future for CWS? So two parts.
The first question, was CWS successful in the first 75 years? Absolutely. I have no doubt. No doubt. East, west, north, south, I honestly have no doubt, that we have made a difference, that we played a role that nobody else played, that we were up to the task. One unique element of CWS is that we provide a unique bridge for American Christians, and to relate to the rest of the world, to understand the world, to engage in dialogue with the world, and I think CWS did that a lot over the last 75 years. So I think absolutely. I think we were successful. We saved lives. We transformed communities. Of course, we made mistakes. Of course, we learn. It's amazing how you see the transformations, the transformation in methodologies that CWS, as part of the global ecumenical movement, made even before the United Nations, for instance. How we invested in partnership, how we capture the true potential of partnership for international development before they were even written in the Sustainable Development Goals 2030. So yes, we were. I honestly feel we were successful. We made a difference, and across the board, I think for every dollar CWS was entrusted, we multiply it. I don't know for how many times. In terms of local ownership, local mobilization of resources, local capacity building, it's just a model. But yeah, no, I think there's no question, looking at the past, we were successful. This year, we are celebrating 50 years of the CWS response to the Peru earthquake of 1970. the largest disaster in Peru history. CWS responded 50 years ago. Some of the veterans of that response, I'm in touch with them, and it's amazing. It's amazing. We are part of one family. And in terms of the next 75 years, we need to do more and we need to be more and better. I think the key word for the next 75 years is we need to be more relevant. In general, the ecumenical movement, the world needs a stronger, more effective 21st century ecumenical movement, and CWS is part of that. So we need to be courageous, innovative, think out of the box, flexible, adaptable. But we cannot. The only option, relevancy is not an option. We must be relevant. Because CWS voice needs to be heard more than before, better than before. And relevant, by relevancy, I don't mean that our institutional budget needs to multiply by 5, okay? Budget figures are just one of the expression, but I think we need to, as a unity, as an institution, CWS needs to be more relevant. Our voice needs to make a difference. We need to lead. CWS is an agency that from the very beginning, we were leaders. We also follow, we are followers, we are team players, but there are certain moments where we need to lead and we don't, and we have done it, in the past, in a disaster response, in a advocacy issue, global advocacy issues. So I think we need to lead, and especially, for instance, with methodologies, with new working methodologies, I think we need 21st century thinking. We cannot use 20th century toolbox to fix today's, to engage in 21st century. And I think in general, the aid sector, the humanitarian sector is still in some way of transitioning, between log frames and technology, empowerment, diversity, young people.
If we look at an organization who supports us, our work, especially on an individual and community basis, the biggest part of our support still comes from the US. But that particular, the average age of our supporters, that's 60 and above. And you were just saying, how can we relate better to these younger people? How can we do that? And one of the things that, at least in the West, you see is that discussions and how religion and spirituality is perceived, that seems to change. And as a result, maybe that's one of the reasons that Church World Service also has a number of challenges in relating to this younger generation. What is your view on that? And if you are talking about we need to ensure that we, stay relevant, continue to think out of the box, how do you put those pieces together? What is your opinion, or what is your hope there?
When I started in CWS in 2001, 2002, I think CWS talked about young people back then, and almost 20 years passed, So I think it's just not CWS. I think it's a global phenomenon. It's a Western phenomenon. It's a developed country phenomenon to talk about youth. Youth are consumers, market voters, as I said, consumers. I mean, everybody wants to understand. Everybody wants to get a piece of it, right? Everybody wants to get a piece of it. My entry point is a little bit personal here. I think there are two things about older people. Life expectancy growth. Today, if today you are 60, you're young, You can perfectly have 20 years of active physical, political, cultural, spiritual, and economic life in front of you. So part of me thinks that we need to, as part of this cycle of life, conversation, we need to revisit how we look at older people, how we celebrate them, how we take advantage of them, and their wisdom, experience, and potential. Because, and to understand, I think that, older people are part of the solution. They have so much to offer, so much experience. The side of the youth conversation I think we ought to have is about older people. And I think we need to revisit assumptions, unlearn certain things, unpack certain concepts. The United States just elected a president, 77 years old. So what are we talking about? If our average donor base is only 60 something, we're blessed. That's number one thing. Celebrate what we have, appreciate what we have, revisit assumptions. And in terms of young people, one thing most commonly organizations, private companies, governments, politicians, churches, they want to talk directly to young people. Part of me asks, what if we ask their grandparents? If we have a connection with their grandparents, why don't we ask them? Why don't we have focus groups of grandparents? Why don't we talk about young people with the grandparents, and how they see church affiliation and participation? Is church participation, church attendance the issue, or is a value issue? Because I see a lot of young people that care for the environment, care for their country, care for, denounce racism. They want, companies that are socially responsible. They don't tolerate abuse of power. They don't take media, everything they consume. So part of me thinks about what if an agency with well-established trust and connection with the 60 and above, age bracket, what if we talk about young people with them based on their own experience? I believe in the power of the CWS story, and I believe older people who support CWS can be a bridge, a partner, an ally in, number one, understanding young people, and second, moving them to action. When you see the kind of issues that young people, urban young people, in developed countries and especially in the United States care about, or a significant portion, are the same issues we are.
The last question that I want to ask you, Martin, is what do you like to say, or what is your wish for CWS?
I want to say thank you. The first thing I want to say thank you. Latin American. I believe in a world with justice, no poverty, no hunger. A world with justice and in peace. So the first thing is to say thank you. Thank you. In terms of what I wish for CWS is to be genuinely and proudly American, an expression of American Christianity, or Christianity in the United States, in all its diversity and contradictions, despite the present moment of polarization and division. But what I wish to CWS is to be a testimony of unity in service, solidarity with the world, coherence. I hope CWS can recommit to global mission, fully aware of its legacy and of its challenges, and as an American, institution. There is a lot of work to do in the United States that Americans need to do and will do. So I wish CWS is highly, while I understand CWS will have to be very and seriously focused on the internal challenges that the United States is facing and will face to, I'm talking about racial justice, climate justice, citizenship in general, what kind of society they want to be. I hope they can continue, CWS can engage in that challenge and at the same time engage in global mission with more humility, with more passion, more humility, and more determination. I think I hope we can be a testimony of unity, reconciliation. I hope we can find new ways to reach out to the different, to those that don't have the same positions we may have in some other issues, but I hope we don't wait to be called, or we don't wait to be invited, or don't wait for someone else to do it. I think it's time to destroy every comfort zone we can imagine, internal, external, domestic, international, revisit and question every comfort zone out there, and start rebuilding with a smile and with happiness, and with sense of humor and with hope. There's a lot of work to do, but we don't need sad faces. We need to do it with a smile, with hope, with certainty that it will be done, not only by us, but with our support and the support of many, many others. So, I wish CWS is in the middle of that.
Thanks a lot for your insight. I really appreciate it. I just was thinking about one quick last question that I wanted to ask you. If you think about one of your colleagues that you have worked with in the last 20 years, who would you name as, which one of your colleagues would you name as, for you, is kind of the example or the embodiment of what CWS is, and why are you mentioning him or her?
Donna Dare, she was director of she was first head of the disaster response area, then of the combined sustainable development, humanitarian assistance program. Because of the kind of person she was, because the kind of leader, because the kind of professional, and because she was transparent, honest, effective, committed, consistent, compassionate, and because she was, she did something that to this day I think is one of the most difficult things to understand when you are in a coordinating or leadership role. That it's not about you, it's about the team. It's about us, it's about us. And it's about how we can do the best Haiti earthquake response we can, or the best food security program we can, and many people, when they have a leadership position, they think it's all about them, their ideas, their style, their priorities, their way of doing things, which on the one hand is totally human, acceptable, legitimate, valid, normal. In my experience with Donna, she was so effective. She was so good, at giving you everything you needed at that particular moment. And I'm thinking in the Haiti earthquake response. I mean, she was my supervisor during the Haiti earthquake response. And to this day, 10 years later, there is no month or there is no disaster of medium size that I don't apply one of the lessons I learned observing Donna. Yeah, she was a model of total of trust and empowerment, to those in the field, with accountability, of course, with accountability, without out of question. But that made a world of difference. That made a world of difference. And she, yeah.
Thanks, Martin.
Do you see
No, you're welcome.
you? Do you see me? Will you be the eyes so that we all can be?
Thank you for listening to Walk, Talk, Listen. Please check us out on 100mile.org or follow us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you want to know more about Church World Service, please check out cwsglobal.org. Thank you.